Summary, Bruce, it's been 10 years. Learn how to bloody tack.
Yeah, learn how to tack. Learn how to tack.
We're back again.
Yeah, another show.
What, 3 shows in 2020 already? Come on. In the last shows, we sort of talked about the worlds and we talked about the beaker. I want to change things up completely differently. In this show, Luca, and I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
For someone who's going back, just is what it is, life moth balance, all those sorts of things. What would you? I'm going to ask you to put your coaching hat on here. What should I do? Where should I focus to improve my time around the course?
Tacks.
Tacks?
Tacking.
Why? Why tacks?
Oh,
So what I mean by that is...
yeah, why
upwind, not downwind?
Oh, look, this is assuming a fall jibe.
No, I'm talking about everything.
I assume you've got a base level of being able to fall jibe.
Okay, let's talk about me. Okay, I'll use me as the example because I'm asking the question.
Okay, tacking.
So my starts can be okay when I actually get my time and distance right. So starts, time, distance, speed. We do a whole other show talking at starts. We might actually look at some starts.
Yes.
And we'll do it in a future show. We'll look at some different starts across some different classes.
Maybe get somebody else in to comment on that because I'm not famous for my good
No,
starts.
I'm not talking about that. Well, maybe, yeah. But we'll look at starts separately. But because then we can also talk about things like transits and electronics and things like that. That's a whole other thing. The second thing I'm thinking though, so your starts are okay. So why focus on upwind versus downwind? From an overall,
I think the loss of speed is this is what it's a controversial comment, but for me, I don't consider any foiling boat that doesn't foil tack as a particularly good racing machine. And that's purely because of the speed differential between going in straight line and what happens when you go for a tack and stop. So the greater that differential, the poorer the technical sailing will be as a result. So if you're going at, say, a moth, going upwind at 20 knots and you don't pull a foiling tack and you stop and then you're stuck in irons and you try to reverse, huge loss. We're talking, half a minute or something.
So the assumption here is it can foil a jibe, right? So
assumption is you can foil a jibe.
So first one is the goal here, given where we are, where I am, is step number 1, minimize the amount of time the boat's in contact with the water.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I'm assuming that the person has decent base level moth sailing knowledge and ability and skill and whatnot. So,
well, thank you for that compliment.
But yes, don't capsize is kind of the obvious one, isn't it? Or don't smash into other boats. But assuming you're not going to do that. And you can get around the course and then you're not capsizing and then you can fall a jibe, then the big thing is probably the difference between the top level moth guys and the back of the pack is the ability to fall tack. And not only just fall tack, but fall tack in breeze and under pressure. Because that's very different to being able to do it when you want to do it and there's no waves around and conditions aren't ideal. You've got to do it like this. You've got to do it when you need to. That first tack where you're trying to cross the fleet after you've done a pin and start, that's critical, But yeah, the speed loss that I mentioned before is the reason why it's so important. It's a huge difference in speed. And that varies and changes even for the top guys. When it's windy, say 25 knots, it's very difficult to foil tack. The top guys can't do it either. So then you see the tactics change to hitting the ley lines. But, and we might do 2 tacks in a work or 3 or something like that, or 1 even. When it's 10 to 15 knots in flat water, well, the speed loss is minimal because most of the guys are foil tacking in those conditions.
Yeah.
And then that really opens up the tactical game. So if you're back at the fleet sailing and you can't foil tack, you should be sailing the same tactics that the top guys are doing in 25 knots, if you know what I mean, which is basically hitting the ley lines.
So hit the lay line. So if you can't tack, hit the lay lines, minimise downtime, regardless whether you're getting knocked or... So almost ignore lifting, knocking, anything like that. Just like
assuming it's not... it hasn't rotated by
of course,
80 degrees. But give or take... normal
conditions.
Conditions. Tacking is the big gain, and the best way to do it is just tack, find a big stretch of water, and then tack 100 times. Tack, go. And go for the motion of the maneuver. It's I like to break it down when I'm coaching the guys. I like to break it down in stages.
Yep.
And sort of go off the water through the maneuver so that you really understand what you're doing at every stage of the maneuver, and it's also good to know what the typical downfalls are. Where do people get this wrong? Most of the time it's turning the tiller without moving the body weight. That's kind of the number one reason why people don't fall tack. They're actually too slow crossing the boat. They wait because they're scared before the tack, because it's daunting, so they sort of lose too much speed before the turn, and then when they want to go into the turn, they just turn the tiller first, and then the wind bar sort of dips in, and so there's little things like that. So recognizing where the typical mistakes are made, and then you can kind of go, well, I'm not going to let that happen. So I'm going to go into the turn before I've lost the speed. I'm going to go into the turn with a flat platform rather than one that's leaning to windward.
So I think for me, thinking through it personally, I think I know all the theory, but I think the biggest mistake that I make is exit angle. I think, how wide is the normal exit angle? Because what I think I tend to do is I go through flat, get through pretty quick, get through pretty quickly, but I almost get the feeling that I'm just coming out too narrow.
That really depends how good your tack is. Well, like if you've done a bad fall in tack, you might drop the tiller halfway through or something. You can still fall tack.
Yeah.
If you get everything right, but you might come out really really low just to sort of power the boat up to get up. I think the big thing is also coming out with a main off.
Yeah.
That's sort of a big thing, is if you can get through the turn, main off, and then just sort of that pull the main sort of at a critical time to kind of accelerate back out of the turn and lift.
So one of the techniques is definitely just like hold the main at the out point, but then grab a bundle of main sheet to keep it through and use that to anchor. I think it's like that's how Dave does it, and then sort of jump.
Lister,
and sort of wing in and jump. At least how I used to anyway. When I last analysed it on video.
Yeah.
And jump through. Is that the sort of technique you use, or you use something
I
different?
don't hold onto the bundle. No, I just make sure that I have that I go into the turn with main relatively sheeted on, not on hard. And just focus on for me, it's flat platform that's the biggest key, and then big ease after I've gone through the boat, and then I try not to bear away too much.
Yeah,
but it's really a fine thing. You're just trying to really match the turn rate to your body movement, so you've got to really get that in sync.
As you go through the boat, is there anywhere in particular that you're aiming to, back corner, mid-wing?
I like to go towards the back. Different people will, I know people that try to enter the front corner. I try to go back because if you go into the turn with lean, which is easy to do because you're sailing upwind, lean into windward.
Yeah.
You have to knowingly flatten the platform before the turn, then go into the turn.
So almost like ease the sail, flatten it down,
and then sort of go. Yeah. So the natural tendency is for most people to go into the turn with a little bit of windward heel.
Yeah.
That just naturally happens because you're already leaning to windward.
That would be me.
So what that does, unfortunately, is as you turn the tiller, it acts as a lifting device and it'll push the bow down as you're going sort of mid-tack.
Yeah.
So it kind of forces the bow down.
This is sounding so very familiar.
So to negate that, weight further back is better than further forward if you get that wrong.
Yeah.
Assuming you're going in flat, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But most people will have maybe a little bit of windward heel coming into the turn.
So because what I've heard is go to that corner, but I think that's when you try. Some people have found if they hit the back corner, that's been the difference between them fall tacking or not.
Yeah.
And what it's probably doing is relieving the symptom that you just talked about.
Which is leaning to windward before they go in. Yeah.
So I think there's the old video that Nathan has. We'll put a link down below, but on the show notes. But Nathan's like turn with your body, right? So he's like, don't turn then go. It's sort of go to get it flat.
The body leads to
and as you go, then as you go, you'll naturally
and this is what takes the longest. It's a little bit like learning how to jibe initially. It's so unnatural to cross the boat before the boom's gone across. And its tacking is very similar. It's so unnatural to be on the new side before you've gone through the eye of the breeze.
Because it's
but the thing is,
because you're right though. Because before we could jibe. Remember back to the low riding days.
Yeah.
Because if I know what I know now back then, it's like it was always that was the one.
You put some foils on it.
No. Well, there is that. Tried that, didn't work. In 2006, I think it was. But anyway, no. The main point that I found back in the day was. The 25 knot, I'm talking about low riding fat skiffs, right?
Yes.
The only area of concern was the jibe at the wing mark, the 90 degree, and so all you had to do, the only thing you had to do to make sure you would get around on a 25 knot day was granny your jibe at the wing mark.
Yeah.
And the whole reason for that was we didn't go through the boat early enough.
Yeah.
It was you'd go in, you'd pull in, you'd wait. You'd wait for the boom to start to come over your head, and then you'd run through.
Yeah, it was way too late.
Way too late.
Yeah.
So,
particularly with the old heavy masts and booms.
Exactly. Yeah. But once you've... the guys at the front probably weren't doing that, right? But for me, it's like now that when you foil jibe, you literally go through the boat, your head's poking out the other side, then you'll turn through, and then you're like, okay, I better flip this sail over.
Yeah.
Which is almost a complete reversal of what it's like to jibe a low riding boat.
Absolutely.
One of the first things that happens, well, not the first thing, if you don't know what you're doing, like you say, you're a kid starting out in the sailboat, they'll turn, the boom will then probably go over the head, and sailboat, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And then they'll probably run across the boat.
But look, a lot of these skiff-type boats, you're taught to actually roll the boat into the jibe or roll the boat into the tack.
Yeah.
So it goes against everything that you might have been taught before, what makes a good tack.
And so for people outside Australia, when we say skiffs, we're talking 49ers, 16-footers, 80-footers. Yeah.
So anyway, in those sort of classes, you certainly roll the boat through the turn. But yeah, not on a moth. Certainly not a foiling one.
So flat, get it through. You make any changes to the setup, like vang?
If it's really windy, I might use a little bit of vang off.
Yeah.
Just not to get blown over on your side. But there becomes, tacking when it's really windy, like 25 plus knots, it becomes incredibly difficult.
So the thing that, I know my boat, particularly the Monstro, where the vang anchor point is actually quite far up compared to most boats. That vang adjustment can make a massive difference. But it's not just that, it's the vang adjustment if you don't get it right. If you get it right, it doesn't matter. It's that when you get it wrong and the main sheet won't go out, the vang becomes critical. I think this is probably one of the things that is definitely true about foiling boats is you've got to sail them fast. When you try and sail them slow, if you get scared and try and sail them slow, that's when things do go wrong.
Yeah.
You've just got to keep your head down, keep your apparent wind forward, and just make things happen.
And this is the mistake when people probably when they're learning how to jibe is typically the biggest mistake is that they are scared of going through the boat, so they just hesitate and wait.
Yeah.
And then the thing lugs up, and you've got no chance of making it anyway. So speed's your friend, But this is the case with any apparent wind boat.
Yeah, no, exactly. Something not unique to moths. Okay, so I can now jibe and tack. Yay! So with I think one of the numbers that you hear had a bit coming out of the worlds was 20 knots upwind. Right, 21 is the usual. 21 if you're told. So what does that look like?
20 is so 2018.
So what does that look like now? Like from because I know from my personal experience, because I run your foils, done some upgrades coming since the start of the season, and the Swift Small for me, I know literally my upwind speed has gone. It's not 20s yet upwind, but it's definitely gone from like a 14 as a 14-15 maybe if I'm 14-15 low mode, 14-13 maybe high mode, to that 14 now feels real slow. It's a high mode, and the low mode is 18 something upwind for me anyway. I'm not running deck sweeps or anything like that, so there's obviously other games to have in other areas. Plus I'm not a pro or anything like that, so that's fine. I'm cool with that. But what that 20 knots, like, what is that a case of you actually now steering down towards it and building the speed? What does that look like? How do I get my speed from 18 to 20?
Look, I don't think people should be obsessed with 20 knots.
I think they should, because I'm doing that.
It's all about VMG.
Yeah.
And, I had a chat to TV, Tom Burnett at the Nationals or at the Worlds, and he was quite happy doing 17, 18 knots and just going higher. So I think there's times when you want to be doing 20 and there's times where you don't want to be doing 20. And I think it's that sort of moding and knowing when to put the afterburners on. So, for example, I mentioned this in episode 1 where Tom Slingsby was, typically starting on pin or close to the pin and trying to go left first. Yeah. And it would pay off to actually foot off just to get to the pressure, because the pressure, you could see it from the drone videos, there's a lot of pressure down the left-hand side. And if you get there first, then you can really extend and stretch your legs. So in that instance, you might be doing 21 knots trying to get to the pressure. At the same token, at the top mark, where it was quite puffy, and you don't want to go too low because then you sail out of the puffs. So it all really depends what you're trying to do. People are doing up to 21 knots now. It's definitely happening. But I think it's knowing when to do those sort of speeds and what your best VMG is.
So what does moding look like for you? So is it just steering, or are you actually making rig change, like a high mode versus a low mode?
Yeah, I think in Perth was probably a good example because it was so puffy. So a lot of adjustments on the sail controls.
Such as, come on, what are your secrets?
To me, Cunningham's a big one. If I sail into some big pressure, I'll just pull that Huntington on there as hard as I can and just go for speed and just try to extend on that gust, because it is if it's a long gust, not a short gust like I mentioned before. So if I'm sailing at some big pressure, you want to really stretch your legs. But moding's just like in any class, you've really got to judge it. There's no easy reference. You've got to use boats around you as well.
So what I mean though is if you're it's really simply, it's like exactly how are you moding. So what I mean by that is I think it's very different going for pressure, right? Okay, gust comes on, you're overpowered, you want to reduce power or bear away. If you want to go a couple of degrees higher, what are you actually doing to the boat control wise? Are you flattening sail?
Yeah, I mean generally you need bank to go high upwind. So
because what I think is interesting about the moths is there's a danger that you just pull everything on as hard as you can all the time.
We're not far off that.
Because I want to go higher.
When you go upwind,
more drag. As our again upwind, when you're doing 20 knots upwind, the apparent wind can be something like 38, 40 knots.
Yeah, look, we are pretty flat upwind. We're not that far off pulling things on. I mean, I'm probably there's faster guys than me, but I'm probably at my max settings in 15 knots of wind. I'm not pulling a hell of a lot more in 25 knots than I am in 15. I've already got a ton of hang on in 15 knots. So it doesn't change a great deal. Probably Cunningham changes more for me. And it depends what sail you've got on as well. Yeah. They're different. The Lennons in particular respond very well to Cunningham. You can really feel when you've got it cranked on.
Very much a luff driven stuff.
Yeah, and the head falls off and it really sets up beautifully. But there is a point where you've got too much on and you can stall the sail.
So you've got to start easing the stuff.
So you've got to start easing the stuff. And on the Lennon, I remember, I don't sail with Lennons anymore, but I know with my old sail, it was really evident that there was this point of this sweet spot. And if you went too hard outside of the sweet spot too early, you just stall the thing. So there is a fine line. And you've got to look at your telltales. That's kind of the key. Particularly now downwind more than anywhere else. People need to be aware of how easy it is to stall these sails now.
You're trying to make me think about my sailing again, Luke. I don't like that.
It becomes, with these top guys that are doing it all the time, it becomes just like changing gears in your car. It's just something you do and you go through the motion of it because that's just what needs to happen. And I think that's where time on water is so critical.
Yeah.
And that's why you're seeing like the top 3 guys at the World Championships all sailed pretty much full time in the lead up to the event. For them, moding was just
second nature,
and then they can focus on things that are important like tactics and all that sort of stuff.
So in summary, Bruce, it's been 10 years. Learn how to bloody tack.
Yeah, learn how to tack. Get some lessons, get someone to help you. Analyze videos, it's really powerful. I think you can really, if you can get somebody at your sailing club that can coach you and just go out on the rib and point out, obviously they have to have, moth experience. But if they can point out what you're doing wrong, you don't need coaching sessions every week necessarily. Just get 1 or 2 figure out what is it that you're doing wrong, work on that, go back for more coaching, and then see the improvement. I think that's kind of really the key, and time and water.
Cool. All right, we'll call it there. Thanks, Luca.
Cheers, Bruce.